Ready. Hi, Scott. It's your brother, Mark.
And Katie's here, too.
And we're going to read you a new book called Curious George Goes Camping. This should be fun, eh?
Here we go.
Monkeys go camping. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. This weekend, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, had special plans. They were going camping.
At the campsite, the man with the yellow hat unpacked their gear while George looked at all the tents. He saw tents for big families and one just the right size for a puppy. There were even tents on wheels. "Would you like to help me put up our tent, George?" asked the man.
George was happy to help. It should not be very hard to set up a tent, he thought, but it wasn't easy. "George, why don't you go fill up our bucket with water at the pump?" his friend suggested. "We'll need it by the campfire later when we roast marshmallows."
Marshmallows. George loved marshmallows. He couldn't wait to try them roasted. "Now don't wander off and get into any trouble," the man warned. But George didn't hear him. He was already gone.
At the pump, George worked the handle up and down. Soon his bucket was full of water. On the way back down the trail, he saw a family packing up. George watched as a girl poured a bucket of water on the campfire. The fire sizzled out. Whee!
George thought, "Well, that looked like fun." So he poured his bucket of water at the next campfire.
"Hey!" yelled the camper. "We weren't finished with that yet."
The camper began to chase George, but George didn't mean to cause trouble. Now he only wanted to hide. He was scared. The man was yelling at him. He ran into the forest as fast as he could, but he could hear the camper's footsteps following close behind. George went faster and faster. The footsteps came closer and closer until suddenly they passed George. Why, it was not the camper chasing George now. It was a deer. Wow, what fun to run with a deer. Forgetting all about the camper and the marshmallows, George ran after the deer. But a little monkey can't run as fast as a deer.
Before long, George was lost and all alone. He felt tired and stopped to rest. At first he was worried. He was very, very far from camp, but there were lots and lots of other animals to keep him company. He saw a lizard sunning on a rock and a squirrel chattering in a tree. He saw the tail of a black and white kitty peeking out from under a bush. George was curious. Would the kitty like to play? George gently pulled the kitty out by the tail.
It was not a kitty. It was, what do you think it was, Scott? It was a skunk, and it was scared.
Stinky!
And when skunks are scared, they lift their tail and spray. Gee, that spray smelled awful. All the animals tried to get away, and George wanted to get away too. But he couldn't. That smell was all over him.
How would he ever get rid of this awful smell, he wondered. Too bad he couldn't take a bath in the woods.
Then George had an idea. He would wash off the smell in the creek. So he jumped into the cold water. He splashed, and he scrubbed, and he splashed, and he scrubbed. But he was still smelly. And now, even worse, he was wet.
But what could he do? George thought and thought. If he climbed up a tree to dry off, would the smell blow away? So George climbed right to the tippy top of a very tall tree in the wind. Nope. Even dry and high up in the tree, George did not smell better. He was stinky. Poor George. He wished he hadn't wandered so far from camp. He wished he were roasting marshmallows with his friend. Suddenly, George heard footsteps heading towards him. Someone was coming.
It was the forest animals, but they ran right past him. They had seen something very scary. And then George saw too. Oh, it was a fire. George had gotten into trouble for putting out someone's fire, but this fire wasn't in the campground.
Uh-oh. This was an emergency. Quickly, George climbed down the tree and grabbed the bucket. He scooped it full of water from the creek. Then, being really careful not to spill, he climbed back up the tree and swung from branch to branch through the trees, like only the way a monkey can.
When George got close enough to the fire, he reached down and poured the water on the flames. Out went the fire with a great big hiss. Just then, George's friend rushed out of the forest with a ranger.
"George," he called, "I was afraid you wouldn't be here."
"It's a good thing you were here, George," said the ranger. "We saw the smoke from the campground, but you put out the fire just in time."
George was glad to help, and the man with the yellow hat was glad to see George was safe. But he had a funny look on his face. "George," he asked, "what is that smell? Oh my gosh! Oh, I'm gonna be sick. Oh, George!"
Back at the campsite, George's friends helped him get rid of that awful smell. He had to have a very strange bath in a lot of tomato juice, but he smelled much better.
Then the man with the yellow hat invited the ranger to cook dinner with him over their small campfire. "Fires can be nice if you're careful," said the ranger.
And George agreed, especially when you're roasting marshmallows.
Yum, yum, yum. The end. Hope you liked that one, Scott.
That was fun. George definitely had a lot of fun going camping. See you next time.
Bye, Scott.